Good morning.
Hi,
Hello. Nice to see you back at Kett's Books.
indeed it is.
It's
Nice to be talking about some more books again.
yes, excellent, isn't it? So it's Books at Lunchtime at Kett's Books again, and this is what we're doing to make sure that we show people that people can find out about the great books that are behind that closed door, which is heartbreaking that we have so many and it's only us that can enjoy them. Today, what are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about some books in translation because there are some wonderful books out there that are not necessarily on people's radar, which is a crying shame. And yeah, we've got loads to talk about, haven't we? So should we whip through them?
Yep, that would be great. So are we kind of doing Asia today?
Let's do Asia today. Yeah, it was brilliant actually, wasn't it? We started to pull things off the shelf, and in doing so, we realised that we even just have so many more books in translation than we initially thought we had, which is really gratifying. So shall I start? I've got a pile here of books that are Japanese originally, translated into English. We've got some classics, we've got some new ones, we've got some award-winning books. So let's see if we can go through them as quickly as I can.
Yeah, that would be great.
Let's start off with this one here. I know it's been really popular in the shop, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
It's interestingly, I will say this before I launch into some descriptions of the plots of these things. One thing that I've noticed about a lot of these Japanese books in translation is none of them are particularly long. They're all quite compact, and it seems to be, at least the Japanese books I'm reading recently, they seem to be more like vignettes almost than big whopping novels. So that's quite a nice thing to have in mind. This is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Toshikazu Kawaguchi is the author, and it's a kind of time travel-y book. So there's a little cafe and you can go anywhere you want to, but you have to arrive back before the coffee gets cold. And it's been a bit of a phenomenon, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Think I understand that we've had a lot of people buying it. A lot of people speak very, very fondly of it also.
Yes, it was out new last year, and there is a sequel, kind of a return to the cafe, where more people experience have the opportunity to order a coffee, to sit at this particular table and to go back to try to right their wrongs or say what didn't get said in the past. But as you say, they have to be back before the coffee gets cold, or they don't come back properly, really. They can't return to their lives. So it is lots of little vignettes and has been very popular.
Nice sparkly cover as well.
Nice sparkly cover.
If you were in a shop, you would see that, wouldn't you? And you'd go for it.
It catches the light nicely.
This one also is not a new book. This was maybe a phenomenon from last year, and this is very much a case of covers may vary. There have been quite a few different covers. This is Sayaka Murata's book, Convenience Store Woman, and it's about a woman who works in a convenience store who has done nothing that her family expects of her. So she hasn't got married. She seems to have no ambition. She's probably, it's never said, but she's probably some sort of highly functioning Asperger's or autistic kind of character.
Definitely.
And then she decides one day, just to get her family off her back, she decides to do something just to get them off her back. And it's very tenderly written, and it's quirky. I'm going to use the word quirky a lot. It is quirky, but it's also just really very sweet story about not quite connecting with the world around you. So
it really is. And I've had a preview of her new book, which is called Earthlings, and I would say it's fair to say that her characters kind of take the instruction book of life and follow it to the letter. Not able to come up with any of the nuances, and it doesn't really work. It does make them slightly marginalized because they are trying to do exactly as they've been told. But in the one you were showing us, Convenience Store Woman, she takes great comfort in knowing that if she follows the process guide from the head office at the convenience store, that she's going to be all right. And that's kind of her guiding principle for life. And her identity, quite literally, is wrapped up in that name badge. So interesting. Doesn't quite work to plan, does it?
No, not quite. But it does make you question, the kind of things that we all cling on to just to kind of get us through the day. We all have these kind of crutches that make us feel like we're on track or we're normal. Maybe not to the extent that she does, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Next up, here's a stone cold classic. This is Kitchen by Banana Yamamoto. And can I just say what a fabulous name that is?
That is a great name.
Isn't it great? This is actually published in the late 80s, so it's quite an old book. But because we know that not many people have explored Japanese fiction presented to you now, it's actually a story that's divided into 2 or 3 stories, I think, about the relationship between different members of a family. So it explores, family relations. There's also a transsexual character in there, which is extraordinary for that to have been written into a book that's more than 30 years old in Japan. And it's considered to be a modern classic in its native land. So again, not a long book, particularly as it's divided into essentially short stories. It's very, very digestible.
And I'm just getting the sense that it's worth pointing out that these books are great gifts for people who have read everything, because they're unlikely to have read these, and they're not inaccessible, but they're just literary enough that they're going to be interesting for the most experienced readers, and they're not very long. So there are people who are very difficult to buy for because they have read everything and they say they don't have time, or whatever the obstacle is. These aren't bad choices. Also, because they've been put through the process of being selected and translated and repackaged and redistributed, an awful lot of investment has gone into getting them to us. So somebody out there really believes in them. A lot of people believe in them. So you're kind of guaranteed a good read with the book in translation.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. No, but you're absolutely right. You wouldn't bother, would you, if it was a lesser novel?
No, no. An awful lot goes into, a lot of investment goes into getting a book into other languages. What's that?
Here's another one. This author, I don't know if they have an agreement with the people who do their cover, but she always has floating people on her covers, which makes it very easy to spot. I'm not suggesting you buy it on the strength of the cover, but it's quite noticeable. Hiromi Kawakami wrote this, the Nakano Thrift Shop. And it's about somebody who works inside a thrift shop where all these items have their own backstory, and they all have their own histories. And so she talks about the people who work in the shop, and it's the relationship between the co-workers there. And I think a lot of these plots that maybe I'm making them sound quite similar, and I don't mean to, but I think that a lot of these offerings we're talking about today, they explore kind of this very fundamental thing about how we connect with each other, and often that's quite subtle, and so maybe it is better suited to shorter novels, but they're really quite life affirming. And this last one is particularly so. This is Yoko Ogawa, and this is a book called The Housekeeper and the Professor. And of all of the ones I've shown you, this is possibly my personal favorite. This is about a woman who's a single mother, and she is a housekeeper, and she just struggles along, as we all do, and she gets a job at looking after a professor who is pretty much housebound, and it turns out that he has lost his memory. He was in a car accident, has lost his memory, and has only an 80-minute memory cycle. So when she meets him, he's completely covered in post-it notes or little messages that are safety pinned to his jacket. The most important of these is, I have only an 80-minute memory. And so what happens is the housekeeper starts to kind of make inroads to try and form this relationship with a person who won't remember her the next day. And soon enough, her son comes along with her, and the professor visibly just opens up to this child. And so the book is really, again, it's very similar to the others, but it's just about the importance of these connections that we make. And sometimes they're unexpected and sometimes they're unusual. And
just one second. Just 1 second. Sorry about that, phone ringing. So you're finishing up about the housekeeper and the professor.
Yes. So all I was really saying is that a lot of these books, you know, they explore these relationships that we all have, and whether they apparently are insignificant or surprising, on the effect and the legacy that these things have on us. Maybe long after they've happened. And I haven't got the book here, but I will mention it in passing. There's another book that fits this description called The Guest Cat. I cannot remember who wrote it off the top of my head, but that's exactly the same. This cat comes into this couple's life and just does its own thing, and it somehow transforms them, and it transforms their relationship. And that's really the sum of it. But it's a really, again, a really lovely story. So as I said, tons of these books, and these just scratching the surface of the Japanese offering that we've got at the moment. But I believe we've got some more from the region. So what else have we got to talk about?
I will just point out that these have been popular. So yes. Correct my pronunciation, but I say the Seishi Yokomizo. And so this is the Inugami Curse. And the other is the Honjin Murders. So during the first lockdown, we had a lot of requests for these. I'm not entirely sure why. They're kind of quaint 1940s crime, kind of, did you say more Agatha Christie sort of thing?
They're a much lighter crime. They're quite campy. They're kind of Dorothy L. Sayers-y, you know, that Christie type thing. They're very dated. They're very of their time. But I think that kind of nostalgia is what part of their appeal, frankly.
Right. Okay, excellent. So we've got that, and I have two others to throw out from Korea, actually. So I don't know very much about this one. This is Stories, and Diary of a Murderer by Kim Young-ha has very good reviews, and apparently he has won every Korean literary award and is acclaimed as the best writer of his generation. I think this is not going to be quite as light and quaint and subtle, because it's some of it is described as explosive stories in which fathers are serial killers and the kidnapped find their way back home. But still, the crime reads on the blurb say that the author finds the humanity inside the other, the comedy inside the tragedy, and the twisted within the seemingly normal. So this is a set of stories. That's an option from Korea. And similarly, or not, I have read this. Kim Jiyoung Born 1982. This has sold millions and millions and millions of copies internationally. It's been translated into 18 languages, and it's got a woman without her face on the cover, because she very much feels like she doesn't have her own identity. A bright girl growing up in a family, but keeps being pushed by almost accidents of society, little things she goes along with every day, like you'll sit here, or you'll take this bus home, or whatever little things she does just to get along with the day ends up pushing her into a completely bound place in life, which is very opposite to the messages that a modern girl will get about be yourself, you can do anything. Society is not, in Korea, is not geared to support that kind of identity. Even though there's the pressure to go to school, go to university, do well, there's still the pressure to have a family and so on, and it completely collapses. Everything collapses in her situation. And even though it is extreme in this case, it does speak into women's experience in an awful lot of the world. So it's not a cheap paperback. It is £12.99. But as we said about translation and investment, somebody's had to do the work to get this to us. It is astonishing, actually. Yeah, I do recommend this. So we did have a look around for books by Chinese writers in translation, didn't we? And
we did, yeah.
That's
be somewhat of a dearth of them at the moment, but we are determined to find some because we find that quite extraordinary that we can't bring any to mind.
Yeah, it feels like a gap in our learning or a gap in the trade, one or the other. So we'll keep looking. So, right, excellent. Well, thank you ever so much for joining me again.
Well, thank you for joining me too.
Right, I'll catch up with you soon.
The video.
Take care. Oh, if people want to order books, they can ring 01953 603 663 or email orders@kettsbooks.co.uk. Yep, thanks. Bye.